You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250, where we look at events that took place 250 years ago this week. This is from the American Revolution Podcast, just a short bonus episode to remind you about important anniversaries of the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the Continental Congress's decision to reject a conciliation proposal from Parliament and other events from the week of July 30th, 1775. The week of July 30th started out with a bang. On the night before, British regulars had reinforced their defenses on Charlestown Neck, which was the new defensive line for the British after capturing Bunker Hill a few weeks earlier. The Americans sent newly arrived Pennsylvania riflemen to attack the defenses and take some prisoners who could be interrogated. The Americans managed to sneak up on the British before opening fire, killing several of the enemy and taking 2 prisoners. 1 American was either killed or captured in the attack. The following night, the British responded with attacks of their own on American pickets, leading to additional fighting, but this time with no apparent losses. The following day, Continental Major Benjamin Tupper led a strike force on Brewster Island, which is out in Massachusetts Bay. British regulars were attempting to repair a lighthouse on the island. Brewer's men drove off the regulars and destroyed what was left of the lighthouse. That same day, July 31st, in Philadelphia, the Continental Congress rejected Lord North's conciliation resolution. Now remember, back in February, the British Prime Minister had proposed this resolution, which Parliament had passed. Its goal was to end the argument in the colonies over taxation without representation. The resolution allowed that any colony that agreed on its own to come up with the requested costs of defense and government administration through its own taxes could be exempt from direct taxation by Britain. Parliament would continue to pass regulatory tariffs on the colonies, but would guarantee that the money raised would be spent in that colony. For the colonies, one big problem was that it was still up to Parliament to decide how much money needed to be raised, and that there was no limitation or guarantee of reasonableness on requests for money. It was a bit like a bully saying, "If you voluntarily hand over all the money I want, I won't try to rob you." In light of all the violence and abuses that the colonies felt they had suffered up until this time, they just weren't in the mood to negotiate on this. Further, Parliament refused to negotiate with the Continental Congress. Instead, it sent copies of the proposal to each colonial legislature. And by the time the resolution arrived in America, fighting had already begun at Lexington and Concord. Several colonies forwarded the resolution to the Continental Congress for consideration. Congress handed the response to the same committee that was writing the Declaration of Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms. The members of the committee were Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Richard Henry Lee. The committee drafted a response for Congress rejecting Parliament's offer. Here is the response in part. To propose, therefore, as this resolution does, that the moneys given by the colonies shall be subject to the disposal of Parliament alone, is to propose that they shall relinquish the right of inquiry and put it in the power of others to render their gifts ruinous in proportion as they are liberal. The proposition seems also to have been calculated more particularly to lull into fatal security our well-affected fellow subjects on the other side of the water, till time should be given for the operation of those arms, which a British minister pronounced would instantaneously reduce the cowardly sons of America to unreserved submission. But when the world reflects how inadequate to justice are these vaunted terms, when it attends to the rapid and bold succession of injuries which during the course of 11 years have been aimed at these colonies, when it reviews the pacific and respectful expostulations which during that whole time were the sole arms we opposed to them, when it observes that our complaints were either not heard at all or were answered with new and accumulated injuries, when it recollects that the minister himself on an early occasion declared, quote, that he would never treat with America till he had brought her to his feet, and that an avowed partisan ministry has more lately denounced against us the dreadful sentence Della es Carthago, that this was done in the presence of a British Senate and being unreproved by them must be taken to be their own sentiment, especially as the purpose has already in part been carried into execution by their treatment of Boston and the burning of Charlestown. When it considers the great armaments with which they have invaded us, and the circumstances of cruelty with which these have commenced and prosecuted hostilities, when these things, we say, are laid together and attentively considered, can the world be deceived into an opinion that we are unreasonable, or can it hesitate to believe with us that nothing but our own exertions may defeat the ministerial sentence of death or abject submission? After approving this response, the Continental Congress adjourned until September. In the end, only the colony of Nova Scotia ever accepted the terms of this resolution from Parliament. For more on this story, you might want to check out episode 50 of the American Revolution podcast, where Parliament passes the conciliatory proposition, and episode 68, where the Continental Congress rejects it. Both these episodes will give you more detailed information about what other events were happening around that same time. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. You can always learn more by subscribing for free to the American Revolution podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining the American Revolution podcast.